So I'm going to try something for this channel and do some Sims 4 content. The first thing I want to try is the Legacy Challenge. For people who aren't aware of the Legacy Challenge, it is a set of self-imposed rules on how to play Sims 4 with the goal of surviving 10 generations. The challenge itself is really interesting to me because normally how I play Sims, I just make a few Sims based off random characters and I played it for a while and then I get bored and go do something else. Which is really strange because I really do love playing Sims, it's just that I get bored too easily and I think it's because the game itself doesn't have any real objectives. Sure, the Sims have aspirations that you can do, but it doesn't really affect anything and you can go through the entirety of a Sim's life without bothering about it. Challenges provide an actual goal to work towards over the course of the game instead of just random nonsense. Plus, one of the main reasons why I'm interested in the Legacy Challenge is because I've always wanted to have my Sims have families and then just progress over the course of several generations to see how they turn out. And this challenge is really just that. So I should have the first episode out soon, but first I wanted to make this video explaining what I'm doing as well as go over the rules of the Legacy Challenge, so that I can establish which rules I'm using, as there is a part in the rules that let you choose which rules you want to use over the course of the challenge. Even though I'll be going over the rules, there will be a link in the description for anyone who wants to read them for themselves. Okay, let's start things off with how to start the Legacy Challenge. You simply make one and only one Sim. You can make them any way you want, with any cosmetic effect, any aspirations or talents or whatever. The only rule is that they have to be young adult. Once you finish creating your Sim, you need to move into a vacant 50 by 50 lot. You can also move into a 64 by 64 lot if you have the Get Together expansion, but that will involve extra work and taking on the extreme challenge, which I will not do. You can find the instructions on how to move into the vacant lot in the descriptions, as well as the variant rules for the 64 by 64 lot, but for how to set up in the 50 by 50, I'll show you how to do that. Alright, now I will show you how to move your founder Sim into a 50 by 50 lot. If you want to do the 64 by 64 lot, which, you know, should be like in Wittenberg, one of these. It's one of these, but whatever. If you want to do that, check out the link in the description, like I said before, and it should have it, you know, tell you how to do just that. But for my playthrough, I'm just gonna go ahead and just take this slot. This is 50 by 50. So before you do that, you have to move in to a blank lot. So once your Sim is back in a blank lot, pause and I think you have manage world. Yeah, save and manage. And then I believe we go ahead and move here. Except when you move, as you can see, it's like hella expensive. But if we bulldoze it, then it should only cost about 10 grand, leaving you a remaining of 10 grand left in your funds. Once you get that done, you've officially moved in. Now, don't worry when you save. You'll still see like what was there before, but once you actually get into the lot, play a bit, and then save, it should be vacant. Like, should all be down. Now, some of you might be wondering, like, why did we just buy like a lot and just delete it? well, that's part of the point of the game, is that you're supposed to be able to... You're basically starting from nothing. Like, absolutely nothing. You're going to live, like, in a shack, essentially. Like some of you may start in a shack, some of you may actually just put down utilities in a field. Haven't seen that done yet, but yeah. But once you get here, you go into build buy mode, and then you buy a Knight of the Octagon table. You buy this, and you should have exactly 1,800 simoleons left. It's really important that you should have this. Because, well, it's you're going to end up putting it in your inventory. Now, again, some of you might be wondering, why did you just buy that and put it in your inventory? There's a reason. You have to get your reason number one is you have to get your simoleons down to exactly 1,800 if you're doing the 50 by 50 challenge. The second reasoning is that the statue is supposed to be like your mark of nobility. It's supposed to be the mark of the nobility for your family and whatnot. And if you do not know, basically your month, like when your Sims go pay the bills, and you've wondered why like the bills go up and whatnot, it's mainly because like the bill rates kind of go off on like what kind of items your household owns. Like for example, just by owning that knight armor, or bills have already jumped up by like a lot. So yeah, that's part of the and that's basically part of the challenge. Is basically you're having to start out with that much. Now this also answers the question, like, because some people might be asking, well, if it has to be exactly 1,800 simoleons that we start out with, like, couldn't we cheat our way down? Like, yes, there is a cheat which basically that will reduce your household money, but again, the knight is required because you're supposed to have the bills are supposed to be expensive because of owning that knight. However, like, but that doesn't mean like you will use that cheat later. Like, in a later scenario, I will explain that later in the rules when I go over the actual gameplay rules. But yeah, for now, that's just how to get into a lot, how to start off in a lot. And yes, this will be my character I will play for the challenge. Just a sneak preview of him. Now let's go over the succession laws. These are the rules that I mentioned earlier that can be chosen. Like the name may suggest, the succession laws are what you use to determine who among the next generation will become the new head of the house after your founding sim dies. The first law is a gender law. The options for this law are matriarchy. The founder must be female. Only girls are eligible to be named heir unless there are no female children, at which point boys become eligible for that generation. Strict matriarchy is pretty much the same thing as normal matriarchy, except that males can never become heirs, regardless of the situation. Patriarchy. The founder must be male. Only boys are eligible to be named heir unless there are no male children, at which point girls are become eligible for that generation. Strict patriarchy is the same thing as strict matriarchy, except flip the gender. Equality. The founder can be of either gender. Both boys and girls are eligible for the title of heir. Strict equality. The founder may be of either gender. However, only children of the opposite gender to the founder are eligible to be named heir. This repeats itself for the next generation so that each generation will have alternating genders as heirs. I decided to go with the equality law, mainly because I feel that choosing one gender will lead to a Henry VIII situation at some point, and will only produce one gender over the other. The second law is the bloodline law. There's strict traditional, in order to be eligible to be named heir, a child must be naturally born from the previous generation and be able to trace an unbroken bloodline back to the founder. Adopted children may never be named heir. In traditional, children who are naturally born from the previous generation are eligible to be named heir. Adopted children are ineligible to be named heir unless there are no naturally born children, at which point they become eligible for that generation. In modern, both naturally born and adopted children are eligible to be named heir. For foster, children who are adopted are eligible to be named heir. Naturally born children are not eligible to be named heir unless there are no adopted children, at which point they become eligible for that generation. With strict foster, only children who are adopted are eligible for the title of heir. Naturally born children may never be heir. For this, I think I'm going to go with traditional. This challenge appeals to me for the idea of seeing a family progress over generations. And for something like that, I usually think of a noble bloodline that puts importance on proper legitimate heirs, but will also allow an adopted child to become heir if there isn't any other choice. Lastly is the heir law. Where the previous two laws exist to determine the eligibility of a potential heir, the third and last law will actually decide how an heir is chosen. They are as follows. Firstborn. The oldest, by order of joining the family, eligible living child is named heir. Lastborn. The youngest, by order of joining the family, eligible living child is named heir. Living will. The eligible child with the highest friendly relationship score with their previous generation's parents will be named heir. Merit. The child with the most fully completed aspirations will be named heir. If there's a tie, the child with the highest level in the single skill will become the heir from among the living children who are tied. Strength. The firstborn eligible child becomes heir by default, but the title can be forcefully taken from them if an eligible sibling beats them in a fight. That sibling may have their title taken or taken back if they lose a fight to another eligible sibling. Random. The title of heir is randomly selected from the pool of all eligible children. Every time the pool changes size, the heir must be re-rolled using the new pool. Exemplar. At the beginning of the challenge, name a single trait. This trait must be one of your founder's 3 traits. Any eligible heir that has this trait will gain the title of heir. If a single generation has no children with this trait, or more than one exemplar, follow the firstborn rule. Democracy. This rule may be used if you are displaying your legacy challenge in some public way, either via Let's Play, livestream, blog, or other format where people can leave a comment. The heir is chosen by your viewers/readers from among the pool of eligible heirs. For this, I was originally planning on doing firstborn, but then I thought of how boring that might be and decided to use random. I also really wanted to do democracy, but unfortunately I have no following at the moment on YouTube, so perhaps in the future when I revisit the challenge and hopefully have a bit of a following, I'll give it a shot. Alright, now that we've taken care of the succession laws, let's briefly go over the gameplay rules in which you have to follow in order to keep this an actual challenge. Rule number 1, no cheating, hacking, or mods. This rule is pretty simple, it's just no actual cheats like, the money cheats or whatever. As in for mods, you don't use any mods that give you any distinct advantage in-game. You can use cosmetic mods all you want, because that's just cosmetic, that doesn't actually change gameplay. But any mods that actually do anything like give you money over time or certain weird advantages like always succeed at something, those are not allowed. Right. Rule number 2, no restarting after bad events. Again, this is kind of self-explanatory, as in, let's say your sim burnt down the kitchen, or your sim accidentally died or whatever prematurely. You're not allowed to basically, quit the game and boot up the save. That's a big no-no. you basically roll with what you got. Anything that happens, you keep. Alright, rule number 3. You may not move or merge in other Sims into the Legacy family unless you intend to bring them in as a spouse. Alright, rule number 4. The Legacy family must remain on the lot for the entire duration of the challenge. Members of the Legacy family can and are actually encouraged to build additional houses on the same lot. They just can't move from the lot. In fact, if an eligible heir moves from the lot, it invalidates their eligibility to be an heir. There is an exception to this rule in which you can move from a 50 by 50 lot to a 64 by 64 lot. However, you can only do this once, and once you've moved in, you cannot move out. Rule number 5. A Sim can only use one anti-aging item per lifetime. Once they've used it, they cannot use any other means of de-aging themselves at all. In fact, the game has to be played on a normal lifespan speed, and any cheats that freeze, lengthen, or shorten the lifespan will basically be against the rules. Rule number 6. You may not change a Sim's current aspiration. The only exception to this is if you fully completed the aspiration. When that happens, you may choose a new aspiration as long as it's not the one they're currently on. I will also add to this rule that you probably should not be allowed to go in and change a Sim's traits at any point during the game, as since the scoring of the challenge also has a thing where it kind of depends on what traits you bring into the family via spouses. And I've seen a few Let's Plays where people just kind of go in and poke around just for the fact they didn't like a certain trait of the spouse they're trying to bring in. And in fact, it's later in the rules they kind of stress the fact that you're not allowed to know the traits of the spouse beforehand. So I figured, might as well add it in the rules, and since I don't really see it anywhere in these list of rules. Rule number 7. You cannot bring a Sim back from the dead. At all. However, if a Reaper comes to claim the soul, you can plead with the Reaper to try to save the Sim's life, but if that fails, you cannot make any attempt for the rest of the game to try to bring him back. Once they're dead, they are dead. Right, rule number 8 just kind of expands what we went over in rule number 4, in where the current heir to the family is not allowed to move out or be married out of the lot. And in fact, if they move out, it goes over the fact that if an heir moves out, they lose all eligibility to become the heir. Alright, rule number 9 just pretty much states that you're not allowed to play any other household while you're doing the challenge. You're allowed to actually move in other Sims that you've created into the save file. It's just that you can't play them. Alright, rule number 10 just states that you can take the jobs from Sims Get to Work expansion pack. That's pretty much it. Now for the remaining rules, there isn't really much of anything of note to go over. In fact, for the rest of it, I will actually go over in the Let's Play when it comes up. Other than that, there's not much else to go over in terms of rules, so this should be at the end of the video. So I'll see you guys in the Let's Play. Later.